Welcome back to True Crime with Yvonne. Today we're going to talk about the Jesus Killer, also known as Jimmy Maketta, a serial killer. This takes place in Western Cape in the town of Felipe. For 9 months, this town was terrorized by a serial killer. It was basically a town of farmers. Felipe was described as a poor community which was underdeveloped. During this time, the people warned the police that they had a serial killer on hand, but because it was a poor community, they were not taken serious. There, they had a high population of alcoholics, probably due to the hard life that they lived. The people there didn't have a lot of necessities that other communities have. They had no running water, they had unpaved streets, they had no electricity, and a lack of service deliveries. The community was terrorized for 9 months between March 2005 and December 2005. The serial killer would draw maps of where he left the dead bodies, sort of like giving the police a clue because they were doing a terrible job of actually finding him. It was a heartbreaking story, especially when the police was not taking this serious. It was as if the people's life there were not important just because of their economic status. Jimmy Maketta was born in the year of 1964, born in the Western Cape in a small town called Chabot. He had 15 other siblings. He didn't go to school often, simply because he didn't want to. According to reports, he often skipped out going or would leave early. Where was he going at 15 years old? I have no idea. He eventually ended up quitting. He married at the age of 15 in his hometown in the 1980s to Nina. They had 3 children. To my surprise, he was a hands-on father. He was described as a loving parent, very different from his upbringing. He made sure they went to school. He made sure he had a job. He made sure his wife was well taken care of. He showered his wife with gifts. Unfortunately, this didn't last long. One day, he started threatening her, badly beating her, but Nina didn't report it. At times, would break her bones or have her hospitalized. She divorced him because she found out he was cheating. He then married another woman, Janeta. Once again, he started beating her. When Janeta realized that she married a monster, she opted for a divorce, just like his first wife. He often ended up in the bushes of Felipe. As described before, Felipe had a lot of alcoholics living in their community. So now we're going to go on to his first victim. Okay, April 2nd, 2005. A woman by the name of Bonnie Suarez was walking nearby, and a man approached her asking her for intercourse. Bonnie realized that things were getting serious because she refused to go into the bushes with this stranger. So she did what most women would have done. She ran. She ran as fast as she could, but eventually he caught up to her and started beating on her. He raped her, then he tied her to a tree and left her for dead. Barney was in and out of consciousness. In the morning, a good Samaritan saw her and took her to a nearby clinic. His second victim. On the 7th or 14th of April, a woman by the name of Ellis was walking by on the same path as Bonnie. This woman was with her children and a boyfriend. Fortunately, her boyfriend was there to protect her at that moment. The boyfriend, they walked on the path, and then eventually they went their separate ways. The boyfriend went in a separate direction after they bypassed the area. Ellis went home expecting her mom to be there. Hours went by, days went by, weeks went by. Her mom never showed up. This was kind of a typical for her mom. She thought maybe she got another job in another village and she will eventually, come back. The children, Ella's children, was playing with the neighbor's children, and they were making so much noise. So the neighbor told them to go and play, go further out and play by the dam. The children were playing when they noticed a body in the dam. At first, they thought it was a man. But when the kids went closer and turned the body over, it was Ella's mom, the children's grandmother. Upon reviewing the body, they realized that the grandma was raped and strangled to death. The community was outraged because the police was doing nothing to help solve the problem. They had 2 previous bodies found in the same area. The police argued with the community about whether or not it was a serial killer. According to the police, a serial killer, there's a pattern. They might like a certain type of woman. Let's say they're skinny and tall, but this serial killer didn't really had a type, so they didn't consider him a serial killer. At first, it was just women. Then he turned to men as well. He would watch couples pass by. He would kill the men and rape the women while the woman watches. Sometimes he will kill the woman. The police said because the criteria of the victims changed, that it was not a serial killer. First, it was ladies, then it was men, then it became couples. So different types of women. Usually with a serial killer, like I said before, it's just a particular type of person. The police came up with all kinds of excuses. They thought that it was a drunkard killing each other. They also thought because some people were only raped or set free to go, it was clearly not a serial killer. We know that a serial killer is, according to the definition, it's 3 or more people. And in this case, it's been 3 or more cases. Not necessarily the first one we know he didn't kill. The second one he did. How he killed his victims. He used an axe or iron bar to kill his victims. He would smash their faces unwarned. He enjoyed killing couples, so whenever they passed by, he attacked them. A couple to him didn't necessarily mean they're in a relationship. It can be a man and a woman who are friends. It can be a girl and a boy who were just cousins. It can be brothers and sisters, neighbors. However, in Jimmy's head, they were considered a couple. It is unknown if he raped the males as well, but we know he killed them. Because some of these people were set free or survived this vicious attack, they were able to identify their attacker. Even though they were traumatized, but who wouldn't be? When the police started gathering information about their attackers, not their attacker, because remember, they're thinking it's not a serial killer. They're thinking that it's more than one person. So they were looking at more than one attackers. One common detail is that the attacker had a tattoo on his forehead. It says Jesus Killer, given the idea that he is the one that takes life. It could have been a prison tattoo or ashes, according to the women who were raped and let go. It was unclear to the victims what it was. One of the ladies who was attacked said he told her he is Jesus and he had come to take her away. This was quite scary for many women living there. Some of them decided to leave the community. Who knows the next victim? I would have done the same. In October 2005, He resumed his killing, raping, and spraying. So he had a period where he didn't rape, I think about 2 months, and then he started back in October 2005. He broke into a couple's house, and their names were Lucas and Mina. They were asleep when they were awakened by this noise. Lucas went to see who it was, but was suddenly hacked with an axe in his face. He didn't give up. He fought until they reached outside. The neighbor came out and he tried to help him, but he too was also hacked and killed. After they were killed, he went into the house and raped Nina. Sadly, after, he dragged the bodies of the two men into the dump, his usual area. Mina was interviewed and she reported that it was 3 intruders because in her mind, she thought that one person raped her and then there were 2 men outside. It only reconfirmed to the police that it were more than one killer. At the end of October, 6 women raped and 8 murdered. Can you imagine how fearful this community was? They began pointing fingers at each other. That's the state of mind they were in. After this incident, the media started taking notice of this community. It was then the police took more interest in Felipe, the community. However, the police still disregarded the idea that there was a serial killer. They rushed to arrest Stanley Martin. He wasn't a saint, but at his state, definitely not a killer. He was a well-known criminal, yes. He had a malnourished, skinny, fragile body due to his alcoholic abuse. However, Stanley's lawyer wouldn't buy that this meek man overpowered those victims. Impossible, he says. He took Stanley's photos to the victims. Stanley was not the man in question. In April to October, Stanley was away from Felipe, so he couldn't have done this heinous crime. Stanley was acquitted of all the charges pinned against him. Unfortunately, it ruined Stanley's reputation. The people of the community still believed it was him. I know the killer was laughing. It was a game to him. He started drawing maps and diagrams of people he had killed the previous week or day. Shockingly, one of his victims asked the killer to tell her friend where her body was after he killed her. Why? Because she wanted a dignified homegoing. I don't know. This world is crazier than I thought. The killer indeed complied. However, the friend either was too scared to retrieve the body or it was unreal to him. After 2 days, the body was still there. Then the killer himself decided to draw up a diagram for the police to find this woman. He continued this throughout. Still, the police didn't take him serious. The bold killer decided to start writing on his victim's door, "You are going to be next." The women started to leave the community left and right. No one wanted to be in this killer's path. He was brutal. We are now in December 2005. 14 people have been murdered and 22 women raped. Finally, there was a break in the story. The killer left his cell phone near his last victim. The police traced the calls to his son, Daryl. His son was able to let the police know that the phone is his dad's. They arrested Jimmy Maketta. He was on parole for attempted murder he committed several years before. Of course, he denied everything. However, the police believe that was the guy because 1, because of the cell phone, and 2, the women later identified him, Jimmy Maketta, as their attacker. Jimmy Maketta didn't have the tattoo on his forehead at this time because it was written with ashes. The police charged Jimmy, providing he also confessed to a guard who he trusted. He disclosed all the murders to one of the investigating officers. all the murders and rape he did. With the tattoo, he also told him in the letter that it was a fake and it was written on with ashes. So that cleared up the tattoo on his forehead. Jimmy was told by his lawyer to stop writing letters. However, he didn't listen. He was loving the attention he was getting. He couldn't get over himself. Okay? We also found out that DNA proved to be his. In the lineup, he was pointed out and testimonies against him. He was the man that raped and killed in Felipe. The first day of trial, Jimmy stood up and confessed to all the charges. So therefore, see, we have it here. We have our killer. He basically told on himself, and the other victims identified him. So with all the charges, he was guilty on 4 counts. He had 19 counts of rape, 16 counts of murder, 2 counts of robbery, 2 counts of attempted murder, and 2 counts of assault. In the court, the psychologist described Jimmy Maketta as the one of the most violent criminals. I bet he was. To hack someone with an axe, there's no survival. So, as you can see, these victims didn't have a chance to fight him off. On May 3rd, 2007, Jimmy Maketta was given a mandatory 25 years. That means he will get out in 2030. That's about 5 years from now, if you're listening to me now, at the end of 2024. And then after he finished that sentence, he will serve 1,340 years. That means he will never see daylight again. Thank goodness. He was very brutal for whatever reason. They didn't say he was mistreated. They said he was poor and his family was large, but they didn't say anything about any abuse. So I can't say it's because of his background. We did see that he was loving, he was kind, but then something in his head that triggered him to become brutal. Also, maybe because his wives, they abandoned him after. Who wouldn't? He's breaking bones and threatening them. I can't imagine living in that house. And there is no excuse for his behavior, none whatsoever. Anyway, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your post notification bell, and come back for another one. Thank you.